It would be
other
really
than
fun if you
my...
just exploded
Oh,
yourself.
hello. Fucking ass! God fucking damn it, Jack!
Lethal Company. It was designed for multiple people, okay? I won't beat around the bush and say, oh, but the walkies can be used as lures for eyeless dogs, and the modder is basically useless in a form of cope. This game gets demonstrably harder the less teammates you have. That's why I thought it would be really appropriate for me to go ahead and teach you everything I've learned over several hours of playing this game as a solo from time to time. I'll break this video down into 4 sections that I think are really important. General strategy for solos, unavoidable stuff, RNG, and some lesser known tips that may benefit you. So yeah, sorry everyone, no tier list today. It's just gonna be me themsplaining. Grab some popcorn, turn on the Subway Surfers gameplay, let's get to it. Some strategies change a lot when you play Lethal Company solo. Not only do you have essentially no morale boosting moments, as it's just you and that dark void of a bunker alone together, isn't that great? But there also isn't a teammate talking to you from the ship, warning you of any enemies lurking around the corner. This makes this experience horrifying, more difficult, terrifying, and horrifying. I'd say the main 3 things to note as a solo are the lack of teammates or walkies, giving you vital information, the lack of hands, meaning the lack of loot overall that you can grab within that 11-minute timer, and the lack of a safety net. What I mean by this last one is that you're essentially playing Lethal Company on hardcore mode when you play as a solo. If you die, everything you've gathered vanishes, and any progress you've made towards your next quota is gone. There isn't an extra teammate able to clutch for you, and it's all up to you. Considering all of this, here are the main things I'd consider stocking up your ship with as a solo when you get the means to. Flashlights for vision reasons, shovels to counter snare fleas, spiders, hoarding bugs, and thumpers, keys or lockpickers to open things, duh, TZP inhalers to be more efficient with carrying heavy loot back to your ship, and radar boosters. You can check on the entrance with these, you can ping sounds with these to attract enemies, you could even use them as lightning rods for dogs outside apparently, which is pretty sick. Shout out to Borts1506 for telling that to me. If you're good with jetpacks as well, and they're on sale, grab one or 2 of these. They can help solos arguably the most, as the movement with them outside is really great and you can avoid outside enemies really well with them. I know I listed a lot here, but I'd never recommend taking in more than 2, as only having 1 or no spaces to loot essentially makes these equipment items a one-time use investment, which is never efficient in my opinion unless we're talking about keys. If you feel like bringing an extension ladder, shovel, and a flashlight for instance, keep 1 or 2 of them outside and bring 1 or 2 of them in. That way you can have as many spaces to loot things as you possibly can. All the items and general tips aside, before I continue on, I just wanted to make a quick point, and you can skip over this if you've heard it all before. Apparently only 0.8% of you are subscribed. I know this is literally a pyrocynical bit at this point, but it would mean the world to me if we could get that number up. I'm trying to hit 10k by the end of the year, and that would be absolutely insane. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. I'll go ahead and make a note next of everything that can completely fuck you over as a solo player. These things can essentially be unavoidable or uncounterable in some instances. We've got 5 of them here. Locked bunker doors, aka secure doors, turrets, ghost girls, baboon hawks, and bad RNG, which we'll get to in a little bit. The first 4 though can absolutely be devastating to a solo run depending on the circumstances. With locked secure doors, running into one as a solo essentially blocks you off from entering certain loot rooms from time to time, or certain hallways. As a clarification, I'm not talking about normal doors that are locked, as those can be unlocked with keys or lockpickers. I'm solely talking about secure doors, the ones that you unlock from the terminal with certain codes. You don't have a ship terminal with you at all times to be able to open and close them. This can be unavoidable if you are too deep within a bunker, and sometimes may cause you to get cornered by something. Turrets are basically only avoidable as a solo if you get lucky with their placements. And considering some moons have a higher spawn rate of turrets and landmines to others, some moons just get considerably harder as a result of these turrets for solo players. In the same way that bunker doors can hinder your progress, turrets can absolutely spawn in a way that makes loot inaccessible for a solo player. I'll be going further in depth on turrets and landmines in a future video when I find out more of them, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comments. Ghost girls. These things as a solo essentially just shorten the amount of time you have on any given planet. They follow you throughout the facility, taunting you for a while, until they eventually skip towards you and lead you into an untimely demise. The reason why these little fucks are unavoidable for a solo is because they can follow you outside. They're the only creature that can do this without exploiting the game, of course, and because they'll always attack whichever player they're stalking, they only stalk you, meaning they only attack you. They are definitively a run killer for solo players if you simply aren't fast enough. Baboon Hawks aren't nearly as bad as these other three, but the main reason why I'm putting them in this unavoidable list is because their whole mechanic is meant to screw solo players and small groups over. How Baboon Hawks work is if they outnumber any group of players, they get more aggressive and will attack more often, meaning that even if there are two Baboon Hawks sticking together and you get close enough as a solo, your life's in jeopardy. If you run into more than two, you'd better hope your stamina bar is close to full and you know where that ship is to book it. There's some other monsters in this game that get harder to avoid as a solo as well, as you only have yourself to look at coil heads, run away and distract forest giants, and deal with multiple hoarding bugs at once. Take note of all of these guys as well. With this being said, these and other monsters in the game can be manageable as a solo, and some are even easier to deal with entirely. The two most notable examples of this, in my opinion, are Brackens and Jesters. Brackens can be pretty intimidating, but they're easier to manage as a solo as you can stay a bit more focused as to where they are at all times. Even if they're really stealthy, can move through vents, or can just sneak up on you, so long as you're turning your shoulder occasionally to prevent them from cracking your neck from behind, you should be okay. Jesters, on the other hand, are easier just based on the fact that coordinating yourself to get back to an entrance to reset its winding timer is a lot easier when you don't have to pull teammates out with you. I want to go ahead and pause the video here to mention that my Discord server's finally up. If you have been waiting for it, or if you just want to join and meet some friends, meet some Lethal Company players, or like gaming people, or just join it. Yeah, cool. Back to the Because of how the game's RNG and procedurally generated interiors can be, some things get easier as a solo, while some things get demonstrably harder. For one, keeping track of where everything is as a solo, from what I find at least, gets so much easier. You only really have to keep track of where the entrance is, where loot is, and where enemies are as a solo. You don't have to worry about teammates, whether or not they're dead, what they're carrying, listening for callouts. All that stuff goes out the window because it is just you. And even though having teammates and callouts can be extremely beneficial, they prevent you for the most part from keeping track of things on your own time as well. Another thing that gets a bit easier is avoiding dangerous areas that you notice as a solo. So long as you're aware of your surroundings, you can take note of somewhere inaccessible, or a place that may instantly kill you, relatively early into a run sometimes. This includes places like turret traps, places like pits that are essentially unavoidable due to slime presence or spider presence, stuff like that. These two things aside, pretty much everything else due to RNG gets fucking harder though. That's so cool. For starters, if you get the short end of the stick in terms of loot, such as a lot of two-handed items, heavy items, or just worthless shit, good luck making your quota without having to stay out in the bunker until 11 PM, making a last-minute dash to the ship and avoiding dogs and giants in the process. Another thing that's genuinely fucked me up in the past is actually the outside generation. If you get multiple beehives towards the entrance or the fire exit of the bunker, get 2 or 3 boulders spawning in the worst possible places, or just have a bad time with weather events, you can either be in trouble as a solo or get pretty injured early on. I'll end this video off with some really important things I'd like to point out that may be incredibly helpful for being a solo in Lethal Company. A quick side note, these tips are actually pretty generalized and can be used for teams as well as solos. Always watch your back in bunkers. Bracken and coil heads can be basically an insta-kill, as a lot of you know already, which means an instant run killer for solos. Never make noise outside past 4 PM unless you think you can outrun a dog, just as a rule of thumb. Sometimes they can spawn earlier, but just try to be mindful of your noise. If a bunker is inaccessible purely due to RNG, or you just haven't found the loot that you've needed to find, I'd recommend looking for beehives outside. In order to grab a beehive as a solo, I'd recommend using this maneuver shown here. Remember, you can essentially get a quarter of the loot that you're supposed to be able to get in this game, as it was designed with 4 players in mind. This should be a mindset that you should take in every time you get into a bunker, be as efficient as possible whilst also maintaining your life. If you're critically injured, prioritize getting back to the ship. Critically injured typically means that something can cough on you and you'll die. If you fall from a ledge, you'll die. And basically anything that can cough on you in this game will do it. I'm looking at you, Spore Lizard. Speaking of damage, the following enemies in this game can and will instantly kill you, offering no mercy and no chance for escape if they catch you. Forest giants, eyeless dogs, jesters, ghost girls, bracken, and earth leviathans. These are technically the only ones that will insta-kill, even though other enemies can get close to insta-killing you if they get up to you. Consider these encounters the most dangerous out of all. Always always bring a shovel. Even if you leave it at the entrance, leave it in the ship, or just take it with you as the only thing, you never know how many thumpers, spiders, or snare fleas may spawn in a bunker, and each one of these creatures can be easily dealt with a shovel. The former two can be killed if you hop up on a railing like this, or in the case of a manor, a table, railing, or shelf. The snare flea can be killed if you bait it into dropping, before smacking it repeatedly. If it grabs your face, try to find the shovel you dropped, as you can still hit it off. Always try to use the fastest entrance into any bunker that you possibly can, because as a solo, you have so much less time than you would if you were to be in a team to grab loot. Learn this jump strategy of offense, bring an extension ladder to dine. The faster you get in and out of a bunker, the better. If you could remember it, get all of your equipment purchases at the company building. You have an infinite amount of time to stock up here, meaning you don't have to waste an hour waiting for your shipment of goods to arrive in a very time crunch type of game. Also, remember to look out for sales in the shop. I avoid weather events at all costs as a solo, but if I'm gonna prioritize certain weather events over others, I prefer rainy, flooded, and foggy moons over anything else. Rainy is objectively the easiest, and the other two are basically just a time crunch. Avoiding the larger pools of water on flooded moons, and the basically invisible enemies of foggy moons is a must as a solo. You can check how close you are to making a quota by gathering your items in a pile and scanning, which is pretty obvious, but you can also check how much money you have for items by simply typing in the highest value thing you purchase, which is either the term jet for jetpack or paj for pajama suit. If you have enough money for one of these, I'd argue you've made it far enough in the game where you shouldn't really need to check how much money you have as a solo dingus. If you really want to though, simply close out of the game to the main menu and check your save file before hopping back in. Let's hope there's a new command to check your current amount of credits pretty soon. Always scan your surroundings at essentially all times. If you're around a corner, anything can be lurking in the shadows, especially snare fleas. They're sneaky little fucks. Scanning can sometimes alert you to extra loot or enemies you didn't see before, such as snare fleas. And outside, it could be essential to finding your way back to the ship if you're not sure. Finally, always prioritize your loot over your equipment. It is absolutely possible to go into bunkers or manors without any equipment and come out unscathed. This is how I personally would prioritize what I go back to the ship with in case of emergencies. First, one-handed loot. Second, two-handed loot. And finally, equipment if you have the room for it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I probably missed some things, but for the most part, these are the things I go by when doing a solo run of Lethal Company. Overall, the most important takeaway I want everyone to have is to have fun and let yourself be scared or excited for loot. I've seen a lot of people talking about the fact that guides create metas in this game and to just let people be spoiler free, but I also think that guiding people in the right direction is pretty essential for a game like this as well. As a rule of thumb, if something makes for the most thrilling and fun experience, go ahead and follow it. As a solo, this game can be super rewarding as well, and that was the purpose of this guide. If you liked this video, be sure to check out my new Patreon. I've been putting up videos early on there for the top 2 tiers, and I've been shouting out anyone in this section of the video as well. So if that type of stuff interests you and you have the means, feel free to support my creative endeavors. I'll start doing live streams there as well pretty soon. But yeah, all that Patreon idiot schmidiot stuff aside, that's the end.